Welcome, project managers and scrum masters, to this explainer on fixing broken utilization models and ultimately protecting your team. Look, today we are tackling a really critical issue that is quietly derailing projects and absolutely destroying morale across the board, and that's unfair workload distribution. We're going to move way beyond just counting tickets today. We're going to look at how to properly audit capacity, spot hidden labor, and actually build a system that protects your people. All right, let's dive right in. So think about your team for just a second. Who is your rock? Who is the person you always turn to when a sprint goes completely sideways or a major deadline is looming? It's such a common trap in project management. We inadvertently punish our absolute best performers with way more work, just because we know they'll get it done, right? It's the oldest trap in our industry. The reward for digging the best ditches is simply a bigger shovel. But the thing is, burnout often hides right behind the visible competence of those highly reliable team members. They just keep delivering, so we naturally assume they're fine. But we really have to ask ourselves, what is the actual cost? Here is the step-by-step playbook we'll be using today to completely audit your sprint planning. We're going to start by spotting quiet burnout. Then we'll audit hidden glue work. After that, we'll tackle capacity versus resource planning, look into resource smoothing and WIP limits, and wrap up with fostering psychological safety. Okay, Section 1, Spotting Quiet Burnout. Let's look at the actual signs of chronic stress. A couple of years ago, literally everyone was talking about quiet quitting, right? That was essentially employees doing the bare minimum. It was a proactive act of self-preservation where people set really firm boundaries. But the data is showing us that this trend has evolved into something way more dangerous, and that's quiet burnout. Think of it this way. If quiet quitting was about establishing boundaries, quiet burnout is what happens when those boundaries are repeatedly tested and just totally crushed. It's this state of passive detachment, chronic stress, and honestly, sheer misery. These folks aren't trying to game the system at all, they are just completely exhausted. Now, data from ZenHR brilliantly illustrates the difference here, and you really need to know how to spot this in your daily stand-ups. So, a quiet quitter, they log off exactly at 5 p.m. and send concise, very professional emails. But a quiet burner? They're logging on late or leaving early just due to sheer physical exhaustion. They might not reply to emails, or they reply with super noticeable delays. Their work goes from stellar to barely acceptable or totally mistake-ridden. And their mood? It usually shifts to irritable or just completely flat. You'll see them actively avoid social contact, turning off their camera, skipping all the optional meetings. If you see this happening with your top performer, please hear me on this. They aren't getting lazy, they are burning out. Moving on to Section 2, Auditing Hidden Glue Work. Let's talk about the invisible labor. There is a deeply jarring statistic from the Harvard Business Review that I want to share. It says, women are 48% more likely than men to volunteer for non-promotable tasks. These are the critical tasks that keep organizations running, but they rarely, if ever, lead to actual career advancement. And you know what? This exact pattern applies incredibly broadly to your top performers too. They are the ones who step in first, they stay late, and they absorb all that team stress quietly. They are systematically punished with extra, totally unrewarded heavy lifting simply because they are capable. We call this glue work. It is the invisible labor that absolutely holds the project together, but guess what? It never gets a JIRA ticket, it gets 0 story points. I'm talking about the emotional management of a highly stressed team, mentoring that junior dev who's struggling, fixing a bug that someone else completely missed, or anticipating a tough stakeholder's needs right before a big review. This kind of work is constant, it's draining, and it totally bypasses your sprint backlog. If you are only allocating workload based on raw, visible task counts, you are completely ignoring the massive cognitive load of this glue work. And honestly, the sheer volume of these hidden time sinks is wild. According to organizational research data, 48.4% of respondents report losing between 21 and 40% of their actual working time to totally unproductive tasks. Things like just waiting for approvals or giving repeated clarifications. We call this effort leakage. Your team isn't just doing the work, they are constantly managing the friction around the work. This silently drains your team's capacity, which obviously leaves them with even less time to complete the actual tickets assigned to them. Which brings us to Section 3. Capacity versus resource planning. Let's get into the tactical frameworks. The very first step here is to stop confusing capacity planning with resource planning. They are close cousins, actually scratch that, people often treat them like the same thing, but they tackle completely different questions. Capacity planning is highly strategic. It determines the total workload your team can handle based on actual available hours. It asks the big question, how much work can we take on? Resource planning, on the other hand, is tactical. It allocates specific people and specific skills to those tasks. It asks who is doing what and when. So the crucial takeaway is this: you literally cannot schedule resources effectively if you haven't mathematically proven your baseline capacity first. Here is the concrete mathematical foundation you need to bring to your very next sprint planning session, courtesy of ToggleTrack. It's simple. Team capacity equals available hours multiplied by your target utilization rate minus time off. You absolutely have to factor in a realistic utilization rate, usually right around 80%, because human beings cannot be productive 100% of the time, right? They need time for all those meetings, the constant context switching, and of course, that hidden glue work we just talked about. If you just assume an employee has 40 hours of straight, available sprint capacity every week, you are mathematically setting them up to fail.
All right, Section 4, Resource Smoothing and WIP Limits. Let's balance that workload.
So, let's talk about resource smoothing. This is a brilliant technique where you keep your final project deadline fixed, but you actively redistribute the workload to prevent those crazy peaks and valleys of stress. To do this, you build out your complete schedule and immediately identify your critical path. Those are the tasks that absolutely cannot move under any circumstances. From there, you calculate your float, which is basically your wiggle room. Once you analyze the allocation and see exactly where your top performers are overloaded, you can redistribute those non-critical activities, the ones with float, into their quieter periods. You maintain your firm deadline, but you completely smooth out the panic. And to protect your team in real time, day to day, you must implement work in progress, or WIP limits. According to Agile Mania, WIP limits are easily one of the most powerful tools in Kanban. By strictly restricting the number of tasks that can be in progress in any workflow stage at any given time, you are essentially forcing the team to focus on completing active tasks before they pull in new ones. This is a vital, non-negotiable defense mechanism to stop your top performers from absorbing way too much parallel work and silently drowning.
Finally, Section 5, Fostering Psychological Safety. This is what makes it all work. Because here is the harsh reality check. None of these cool systemic fixes will work if you don't have a solid foundation of psychological safety. If your team is literally terrified to speak up, they will just keep absorbing work until they inevitably break. As a manager or a scrum master, your job is to make it genuinely safe to negotiate boundaries. If you even slightly suspect someone is suffering from quiet burnout, I want you to use this exact word-for-word script in your next one-on-one. Just ask them gently, "I've noticed a change in your energy lately. If we have to remove one recurring task from your plate this month, which one should it be?" This phrasing is highly empathetic, it provides clear structure, and it gives them immediate, unconditional permission to let something go without feeling like they failed.
Remember, preventing burnout is an organizational responsibility. It is not an individual failing of personal resilience. You build a healthy system by loudly framing burnout as a structural issue. You have to regularly check in on real, mathematically proven team capacity using those formulas we discussed. And yes, you absolutely must be willing to push back hard on stakeholders when their demand exceeds that true capacity. Empathy is fantastic, but as a project manager, your real job is to act as a structural architect who guarantees a manageable workload.
So, I want to leave you with a provocative question to think about the second this explainer ends. Who is carrying the invisible load on your team today? Really take a hard look at your task distribution this week. Find that hidden glue work, and start fiercely protecting the people who protect your projects. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I really challenge you to bring these frameworks into your very next planning session.